Greetings, my fellow Americans. I'm Mark McIntire, and we're going to be introducing a new feature here on KZSB AM 1290, Santa Barbara's News Talk Radio, serving the Central Coast, as you're well aware. The name of the show is called Freedom Matters with Mark McIntire, and so many of you have asked me for this particular program. I decided that, well, you know what, we're going to bring it to you. Many more of you have noticed that the fundamental American freedoms enshrined in our Constitution are constantly under attack these days from all sides, left, right, even the center. Our constitutional freedoms are not being taught in our schools anymore. In fact, they are being mocked in our college classrooms at taxpayer expense. They are ridiculed in our media and trampled in our courts. These constitutional freedoms rest on the principles and the values contained in the Preamble to the Constitution itself. Oh, if you're as old as me, or even maybe a little bit younger, you learned this in school. Remember these words that you learned by heart? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Well, here on Freedom Matters with Mark McIntire, we interview authors, educators, lawyers, judges, scientists, business leaders, technology leaders, religious leaders, artists, and you, yes, you, the American citizen. And today, we begin our series by interviewing a legal immigrant to America from the island nation of Jamaica that celebrated their Independence Day yesterday, as a matter of fact. This individual is now a professor of philosophy at DePaul University in Chicago, and the author of his latest best-selling book, We Have Overcome, An Immigrant's Letter to the American People, published by Post Hill Press from New York, and it is the dedication reads, I just got my copy the other day, it reads, To the American People in the name of the best within you. So let's welcome Dr. Jason Hill. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for doing this premiere interview for Freedom Matters with Mark McIntire. And secondly, congratulations on the Independence Day for your former nation, your birth nation, Jamaica. So let's start with your journey to America. How did you get to America? How did you arrive here with your grandmother at the age of 20? What motivated you to leave the island nation of Jamaica and make your way to the United States of America?
Well, you know, I'd always been in love with America as a child. I fell in love. I'd come here as a child quite often. Not that often, actually. I came here when I was 5 and when I was 8 and when I was 16. And I'd studied American history very, very carefully as a child. I was a very precocious child, and I studied American history from about the age of 12 until around 14. Mm-hmm. And I had decided very early on that America was the greatest and the most moral country on the face of the earth. I remember writing this in a journal and saying that I must come to America because they've been lay my destiny. And my grandmother was, my grandmother's brother was an American citizen because he was married to an American. Mm-hmm. And he went through the old-fashioned process of sponsoring my grandmother, who got a green card and had to come to the States and work in her 60s and acquire enough money and a financial affidavit to sponsor my mother, who then had to acquire a green card and secure a job in America and secure employment and then sponsor her 2 children. My brother and I decided that we wanted to come to go to college, and my mother decided that we were way too young. So she basically came with my grandmother to offer us moral support, not financial support.
You know, that's an interesting narrative. It seems to have taken a long time for you to get to America. I mean, you did it the legal way. You didn't, jump into the back of a truck and or swim across a river and break into the country illegally. Your grandmother and then your mother had to prepare the way for you to come here and get a college education and eventually become a college professor at a distinguished university. It's amazing that the perseverance and the dedication and the individuality of you and your family to have this dream. In your book, Dr. Hill, you have this moving passage as you're flying into the country that you made a covenant with the American people. I'd like you to address that, if you would, please.
Well, I came to America with $120 in my pocket. I came from a middle-class family, but it doesn't matter. You know, when you come to America, you start from scratch.
Yeah.
I came with $120 in my pocket, and I came here, and as the plane was touching down, I said, this is the first day of my life, and I'm making a sacred covenant with the most benevolent people on the face of the earth, the American people, the greatest country on the face of the earth, and the most moral country. And the covenant that I'm going to make with this country is the following, that I'm always, for as long as I live in this great country, going to offer up the best within me, the highest common denominator. I'm never going to come as a victim. I'm never going to come with a sense of entitlement, because the country owes me nothing, because immigration is not a right, it is a privilege. I'm always going to offer the best within me, the noblest, the highest. I'm going to make an enormous contribution to this country that has granted me the privilege of coming here. And I'm going to ratify and renew this covenant on a yearly basis based on the goal plan that I have set for myself.
You know, the interesting thing about what you've just said, Jason, is the fact that this is a recurring theme with you, the best within you, the best within you. And later in your book, you describe how race and categorical identity, group identity, is an alien concept to the Jamaican mind, and certainly to your mind. But you go on to even say that it's alien to the Jamaican mind. When so many Jamaicans have come to this country, they do not think of themselves as black or white or from Africa or from Jamaica. They think of themselves as individuals, and they concentrate on the best within themselves for success.
That's right. I mean, I came here in 1985, and I came here after what I described as the magnificent third founding of America, after the momentous passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Passage, where race was no longer determinant of your destiny. America had a very ugly racial past, was born with one cannot deny that, with a terrible birth defect, slavery. We had segregation and Jim Crow. And I think Americans had gone to an enormous amount of efforts to atone for its ugly racial past by according blacks legal equality with their compatriots. America was not founded on economic equality. It was founded on political equality, and that coming to Atlanta in 1985 at the age of 20, I had come at the best time for a black person, an immigrant, to come, where blacks had achieved full recognition before the law. And so I came as an intransigent, implacable, unbridled individual, with a belief that if you put forward grit, tenacity, resilience, and an ethos of hard work and not a sense of entitlement, and the best within you, that given the myriad and the plethora of opportunities that this country avail itself to each individual, that success was all but impossible not to achieve.
Yeah, I want to, before we take our first commercial break, I want to read us a little bit of a section where you reflect upon your arrival in America. And here's that section from your book, We Have Overcome. I was in the United States of America, home of the dreamers, the most magnificent land of opportunities. I was here to make something of my life, a black man who had never met any philosophers or real novelists in his life, but who was determined to become a philosopher and write books in the field of ethics, political philosophy, and American foreign policy. I knew nothing of the latter at the time. A dreamer, eager to publish poems and novels about the Caribbean that Americans would come to love. A gay man escaping the toxicity of homophobia that is constitutive in Jamaican identity, and who knew that one day in America he could find a place and peace and true love with a person of his choice to be left alone. We're going to take a little bit of a break and be back with Dr. Jason Hill. Stay with us. And we're back here with Freedom Matters, and we're interviewing an extraordinary individual who came to this country at the age of 20 from Jamaica, the island nation of Jamaica, and through hard work and determination and individuality, he actually became a professor of philosophy eventually, and a tenured professor of philosophy at that, with even more tenacity and even more struggle, and the author of a book, We Have Overcome, and we're speaking with Dr. Jason Hill. Jason, in this section, I wanted to get into some of the aspects of the early challenges that you had, especially from some unlikely sources, your liberal colleagues and your liberal professors that you talk about in the book, surprisingly exhibiting racist attitudes towards you and being very judgmental about your success. How did you overcome those challenges to achieve what you have achieved?
Well, I never took them very seriously to begin with, because you see, I had no victim story to tell. I was working up to 45 hours a week, working 3 jobs to put myself through undergraduate before I won a scholarship to do my PhD. I never took them seriously, so I never gave them the benefit of granting me their victim status, and I never gave them the satisfaction of giving them a meaning and purpose to their lives, which is what you do when you appear as a victim before people, because you in order for them to garner some meaning from their lives, that you have to hand them a victimology narrative. So what I did was I kept on cultivating excellence in my character, and I kept on honing my intellectual skills, which annoyed the hell out of them, because they couldn't believe by what temerity does this black man have to be so articulate, to be so bright, and to be achieving straight A's and always being at the top of his class. So I completely ignored them, and I cultivated excellence in my character, and just became more of an intellectual. Read voraciously, not just in philosophy, but in economics and anthropology, psychology, military history, and started college late. I didn't start college until I was 22. So I overcame it not by, I say in the book that I have never actively fought racism in my life. I have simply adduced myself as evidence of its absolute stupidity. Because I think
you actually say in the book that the whole concept of race is anathema to the concept of America.
Yeah, I think race has always been endemic to America, but I think that race is a betrayal of the best within America, because I think when you look at the founding of America, America is an unprecedented phenomenon in the sense that, in my reading of history, it's the only country that's founded on not lineage, not blood, not ethnicity, but on the pledge of a set of loyalties and allegiance to core values around which the republic is organized. When you look at Germany, that just reorganized or vamped its citizenship laws about 15 years ago, every single other civilization or culture has had its citizenship laws based on the criteria around race or ethnicity. America is an amazing country. I tell my students all the time, when you read world history, this is an unprecedented phenomenon. We are and I hate the word American culture. We're not a culture, we're a civilization. Mm-hmm. American civilization is unique in the sense that we have said, it doesn't matter where you come from, what race, what ethnicity, what religious orientation or background you come from, you can be an American regardless of race. You can be an African, you can be a Croatian, you can be a German, you can be Asian, and you can be an American. And my students at 20 or 21 just think, oh, well, whatever. And I say, no, not whatever. read world history and realize how rare this is. So when I say race has always been endemic, but it's a betrayal of the true spirit of America. This is what I mean, that it is metaphysically irrelevant, or a metaphysical betrayal, in the sense that the organizing principle around which citizenship and civic identity and civic belonging was never organized. There have been, of course, exceptions and betrayals, but in principle was never organized around ethnicity or nationality or race.
So I take it that you were rather shocked and dismayed to leave an island nation where race was not even thought of seriously, was actually laughed at and made fun of, to come here to the United States, to America, the land of your dreams, and find that the entire population was obsessed with racism and race, even though there are no races in human biology.
Well, it wasn't a surprise because I'd come from a very mixed background. My grandmother was Sephardic Jew, and she married a man who was black and Hispanic. And on my grandmother's side of the family, my mother's father. My father's mom was English, and his father was Jamaican. Mm-hmm. So I came from a very mixed background. I was considered a brown person and didn't realize I was black until I came to America because of the one drop rule. But I had known about America's history, right? I had known about the one drop rule. So on arrival to America, I didn't have any sort of resentment. I knew this is I would be classified as black. Had no problems with it. You realize I'm a romantic realist, and a pragmatist, and had no problem with understanding the racial realities of America. But I must say that realization not for one moment ever deterred me or ever led me to think that the racial ascriptive identity that would be allotted to me would ever for 1 minute hold me back in life. It would never be determined. It would never determine my fate. It would never be a hindrance. Not for one moment did I believe that.
Well, in your book, the word God, either large G or small g, most of them are large G. I think only 3 of them are small g. The word God appears, I counted them this morning, 15 times. How did you, can you tell our audience, how did you come upon this rugged individualism that when you landed in the United States, you found that you really are conservative? You weren't a black liberal. You were sort of a conservative liberal in many ways, but you didn't even consider yourself to be black.
Well, I had always been a rugged individualist. I came from a family of communists. My grandfather really should have been the first prime minister of Jamaica. He was put in a detention camp by the British government because he was responsible for getting the British out, and he was a hardline communist. My father, my beloved father, whom I loved more than anything else, was a socialist. Both my grandmothers were hardline socialists. I think my mother was apolitical. I don't think she was very political. But from an early age of about 12, I watched socialism, which I considered political calumny, destroy my country. And I was never tempted by it. As much as I loved my family and my father, I just thought socialism was nonsense, empirically untenable, and that there was something theoretically. As I grew older, around the age of 15, I began to realize that expropriating money from productive people and handing it to unproductive people was theft. And I remember writing in my journal, just as it would be wrong for someone to pick pick my pocket and finance his desires and his whims. When the government does it legally, it makes it no more right.
Well,
but I actually came to America as a liberal, a sort of conservative liberal. And it really wasn't until the past 5 years that I became more of a hardline conservative independent, where I became much more fiscally conservative, thinking the welfare state really, really was unethical, and became more culturally conservative, seeing the drift towards how our educational system has become so left-leaning, ideologically indoctrinating our students towards Marxism, and seeing how the capitalism that I think is responsible for wealth creation and lifting so many people out of poverty has become so denigrated that I became more of a radical for capitalism and an enemy of the welfare state, which I think is unethical.
Well, you know what? We're going to take another break, and then we're going to be right back with Dr. Jason Hill, and he is going to be explaining how he actually formulated the moral foundations of his book, We Have Overcome. So we'll be right back after these messages. And welcome back to Freedom Matters with Mark McIntire. I am your host, Mark McIntire, on KZSB AM 1290. Thank you very much for joining us. And we're having a vigorous conversation with the author of We Have Overcome. It's now in its third printing. I have to wait to get my copy. Dr. Hill was very, very generous in giving me a peek view at the galley version. But you can now get this on Amazon, and you can order the book and enjoy it for yourselves. Dr. Hill is a professor of philosophy at DePaul University in Chicago, and he teaches a wide range of courses from ethics to political theory. And his most interesting thing is that he doesn't have a concept of belonging to a race. He doesn't have a group identity or group politics at the forefront of his teaching or his philosophical thinking. Rather, he has a sort of an Ayn Rand perspective on reality. That's, of course, the famous philosopher from Russia who injected into American philosophy at the college level the idea that you really can't help other people until you help yourself, until you build yourself up and make yourself strong morally and physically as well. Then you can't really do anything for other people. There's a very, 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 very strange limit to what you can do. So, Dr. Hill, I wanted to continue this drilling down that you were just doing for us before the break. How did you begin the moral formulation of the foundation of? You say in your book that America has a moral foundation. You don't hear that these days. How did you put that together?
Well, there are two things to think about. The initial writing for this book came from just being sick and tired of living in what I thought was an age of Americophobia, where I thought that the American dream and this great republic that we live in were being denigrated by far-left liberals who were dumping on America's treasure trove, her people, and this great country. And so I thought I needed to write a love letter to the American people to express gratitude to them, to explain why America is not just the most benevolent and most moral country, but it's the greatest country, and why there's something exceptional about the American people. And as far as the moral foundations of this country, that idea had been really brewing in my head from around the age of 14, when I had been studying American history in high school. And one of the things I do in the book is explain and tell the stories of immigrants who come here, and to flesh out empirically that this is just not my theoretical musings, that this is not just some sort of conjectural idea I have that America is great, that I tell the stories of countless immigrants from Guatemala, from this Vietnamese guy who came here who couldn't speak a word of English, countless immigrants who've come here and saw not endless bigotry and an imperialistic nation and an oppressive country, but saw a country lined with gold and took a little bit of that gold up. So, and made something remarkable, some modicum of success for their lives. And so this idea was one that was forged in the crucibles of theoretical study and also forged in the crucibles of organically living the American experience. I've lived in 5 states in this country. I've taught at 5 universities, and I've lived here now for 32 years. And so I think the two came together where the theoretical and the lived experience matched quite beautifully.
You seem to articulate something that's very, very important, and you drill down to this, that you can either decide to be a victim in life, or you can decide to be not a victim in life. Is that where is that the core? Is that the rock that you ultimately found as the basis of your ideas?
That's exactly true. I say to my students all the time 2 things fundamentally: that not everything that happens in your life is your fault. Everything that happens in your life is your responsibility. Unless you choose to commit suicide, you can kill yourself. You know, I can slip on a banana peel and break my foot. And I can sit there and cry and call the police and say, find out who left that banana peel. It's not my fault. It's not my fault that somebody left a banana peel and I broke my foot.
It was the Russians. It was the Russians, Dr. Hill. They left the banana peel.
But it's my responsibility to get up off my butt, go to the doctor, and by whatever means heal and go on with my life. So not everything that happens to you is your fault. Everything that happens is your responsibility. And the second thing I tell my students to prevent yourself from becoming a victim is that good things will always happen. Bad things will always happen to good people, because suffering is built into the nature of life. But the cultivation of your goodness is the only source from which you will heal from the bad things that will inevitably happen to you. And I just refuse to see myself as a victim. It's just not the way in which I configure my life.
I love the part where in the book where you describe how when you collected your Social Security card and you went to find work in New York or wherever it was, and you interviewed for 24 jobs in one day, and you got turned down by every single one of them, and finally you found yourself as a credit card collector for a bank, and you stuffed envelopes. Now, I mean, this whole idea that, we can't pick strawberries because that's too menial. We can't stuff envelopes, that's too menial. And so we're going to import masses of illegal aliens to do that work for us. It didn't seem to ever occur to you that America would be doing this sort of thing, that it must have been a disappointment to you that even though you describe how America has made colossal mistakes and inflicted tremendous indignities upon immigrant populations in various waves of Italians and Irish and blacks, especially with slavery. But it never occurs in the book. You never see you taking a victim posture. The story about when you were going for tenure at DePaul, and the tenure committee took like 7 hours to review your case, and then they gave you the bad news. Well, no, the majority voted not to give you tenure. That didn't stop you from teaching. That didn't drive you to sue everybody in sight and blame everybody else for your predicament. You simply resumed your teaching, resumed your education, resumed your publishing, and you didn't let that stop you.
Not at all. Actually, I had more publications than my chair. Someone under 40, and she'd been there 23 years, and I'd been there like 6 years. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to continue publishing. I'm going to continue my scholarship. I'm going to continue being a really good teacher, and I'm not going to play the race card. Lawyers were calling me and saying, "Do you want?" I said, "I'm going to let institutional process play itself out.
Right.
My record speaks for itself,
right.
because there's something undignified about being a victim. There's just you hold yourself up as some sort of certified moral icon in which you can claim perpetual innocence because you're a victim, and I'm not innocent. None of us, we're not all innocent.
No, and we're not all guilty either.
Right, and there's just something about holding your dignity by having light being shed on the positive.
Well, we're getting ready to take our next commercial break, and I want to just prep that up by letting the listeners know that we'll be in conversation about the very topic for which you have achieved almost overnight instant fame, and that is the notion that as long as public universities and schools are going to be Marxists and socialist indoctrination centers, we should not give them any more money. We should simply defund them. So when we come back from our break, we're going to dive into that section of the book. And I am Mark McIntire, your host for Freedom Matters. We'll be right back. And we're back here on Freedom Matters on KZSB AM 1290 here in Santa Barbara. I have on the Skype phone, not visually, but we have him on audio, Dr. Jason Hill, and he is a professor at DePaul University in Chicago, professor of philosophy, and the author of several books. The one I'm holding in my hand is We Have Overcome, an immigrant's letter to the American people. And I want to open this segment because Dr. Hill has been on Tucker Carlson recently, Fox and Friends, and he's making the rounds, and he's also on a book tour promoting this particular book. And the most fascinating aspect of what he's advocating is the defunding of Marxist, socialist professors and teachers and actual whole institutions. And I want to read from a section from page 130. I'm on page 130 of your book, Dr. Hill, and it goes like this. Who is it that provides the material resources, the financial aid, and who makes it possible for the haters of America, the destroyers of the minds of our young? ? The answer is that it is you, the silent minority, those who fund our universities in large populations or even with small donations. You do so in the name of the best within you, in complete trust that our intellectuals in the universities will act in your own interest, speak in your name, and reflect your deepest, beloved pro-American values. You have been wrong, and the time has come for you to stop funding your destroyers. Wow. Dr. Hill, that is earth-shattering. I got to tell you something. I've been waiting for somebody to say this for years. So, what triggered you to flip the switch and go postal on defunding American socialist and Marxist universities? What was the trigger?
23 years of being a professor in the humanities, trying to reason with these Looney Tunes they've been, pro-Stalin. They're not just leftists. They're pro-Stalin.
No. Tell us about the humanities director who got funding to celebrate the 100th year of Karl Marx or Marx. Tell us that part. That's really interesting.
Of the Bolshevik.
The Bolsheviks. Yeah.
The Bolshevik, as if this is something good, ushering in an era of Stalin that, starved 30 million kulak peasants, a career criminal who ran a thugocracy. This is crazy. I mean, we have people who I've met who've written books on ethical Maoism, who teach nothing but the philosophy of Hugo Chavez, as if this man is your listeners have no idea of the craziness that's going on in academia.
No, they don't. They have no idea. They really do not. They keep giving money. Here at Santa Barbara City College, for instance, we have a wonderful foundation that supplies, raises money from private donors, not tax dollars. This is over and above tax dollars. They raise millions and millions of dollars to carry students around in a sedan chair and stuff bonbons and grapes into their mouths and pipe in rock music and keep them all happy and keep them all welcome. Everybody's welcome. Everybody is going to succeed, whether they have any competence or not. We have wonderfully generous people here, but what these generous donors don't realize is this is not the same college that they funded 23 years ago, 25 years ago, and things have changed dramatically. If the average taxpayer were to walk into a political science class at Santa Barbara City College, they would vomit.
They would vomit. And it's not just anti-capitalism. It's not just that, the orthodoxy that rules and that when you try to keep a different perspective that you are shut down. It's also the hatred of America. The anti-Americanism that is being preached. The idea that capitalism is the enemy and the moral hypocrisy. These fat cats, these lazy, I call them Bolshevik-loving welfare scholars.
You're the first guy. You're the first guy in 25 years that has used the word Bolshevik. I used to use it when I was teaching at Westfield State College, but now I'm glad that you're reviving the word Bolshevik. But now you've added a new one: welfare scholars. Explain that term for me.
Well, they're welfare scholars because, they go on these sabbaticals and they go on these grants, take these grants. And they're also, I'm in philosophy and we have our majors, the majorship is in decline. And the only reason we're not a money-making institution, and thank God that we can still exist and provide a liberal arts education. But why? Why can we? Because we have large donations from Coca-Cola, from the so-called evil corporations, right, that keep us afloat in a truly free market system. We would be dead, but we get funding from these evil corporations that not only keep us afloat, but provide the funding for these welfare scholars to go off to Greece and France and practice their hoity-toity French, and teach Derrida and Lacan and Foucault and all the post-structuralists and all the postmodernists and write indecipherable jargon essays and books that nobody can read. Did you know at Santa Barbara City College, where I used to teach, the philosophy department is not in the humanities? You know where it's located? Do you know where it is? It's in the social sciences, which I think is an oxymoron. If it's social, it's not a science. If it's a science, it's not social. But no, there we are. There, that should show you, ladies and gentlemen, how philosophy has been degraded, to kicked out of the humanities. In some cases, by the way, philosophy departments are actually being shut down. They're as you pointed out. You're not a money-making operation, so you got to be shut down. And if you try to communicate philosophy, as I have done, to a broader readership, you're lacking. You're seen as lacking in pedigree. The disdain that philosophers have for the public is also horrible. You're selling the unwashed masses. Well, philosophy is something special that average, ordinary people can't understand. And so I don't see why the American people, I don't see why taxpayers, I don't see why the federal government should be promoting this kind of stuff unless they can restructure, unless they can be held accountable for the kind of nonsense and the kind of immoralities, I think, that are being committed. I think they should be defunded. And I think you would see how quickly you would have differing viewpoints and a fair and balanced education that these students would receive. Yeah. But because they're not held accountable, because they're allowed to get away with this kind of nonsense, they can do so with impunity.
Yeah, well, they not only do they preach and they indoctrinate into Marxist socialism, but they suppress any alternative point of view. One of my students from last semester was excoriated on Facebook and on campus-wide email for suggesting that people who were not part of the social justice warrior mafia that run the school, that they were suppressed. People like conservatives, people like libertarians, people like homeschooled individuals, people like religious individuals. He was excoriated by name.
Yes.
I mean, they attacked faculty members attacking a student by name. People, the taxpayers don't know this stuff is going on. They really don't. We're going to take our last break, Dr. Hill, and then we're coming back for, the section that most people really like. It's called the legacy section, where you get to tell us how you think the world is going to be a better place because you lived in it. I'm going to be right back. This is Freedom Matters. I am Mark McIntire. Stay with us. And welcome back. I am Mark McIntire, your host for Freedom Matters here on KZSB AM 1290, Santa Barbara's News Talk Radio, serving the Central Coast. Thanks for being with us. We're talking with Professor Jason Hill from DePaul University, and we're talking about his book, We Have Overcome, and the last segment we just talked about was his advocacy of actually defunding the Marxist socialist colleges and universities, public colleges and universities that are now churning out students that undermine the very values of the people who are paying the taxes. And I'm going to read from one section that really struck me in the book, We Have Overcome. And here it is. This is from the book. I cannot communicate to you the anti-American sentiment, the actual hatred of America that is constitutive feature of the academic left in this country, especially found in the humanities and social sciences. There I found a phalanx of bourgeois Marxist professors extolling the virtues of communism and socialism, but living off the profits of a capitalist system. Wow. Dr. Hill, how do you see your legacy as a person, as a professor in life? Why is the world going to be a better place because you lived in it?
Well, I've always been possessed of a love of humanity, and I can't explain why I love the human species any more than I can explain why I like a piece of music. I describe myself as a cosmopolitan, a citizen of the world, someone who loves humanity, who always wants to work for the betterment of the human species, and that in and of itself allows me concomitantly to hate respectability. I hate respectability. When I was a graduate student, I eschewed respectability. I think once you start pandering after respectability, your soul is lost. And because I don't care for respectability, I think I'm a very free person. And because I'm free to inspire people to go for their passion, to speak truth to power, to never ever be afraid of being offensive, but offensive not by eviscerating people of their dignity, but by challenging received wisdom. And I think I don't like to speak in terms of legacy, but I think one of the things that I like to inspire in people is to find the source of your own agency, what brings vitality to your body and your mind. And I know that when I speak and when I write, it is from a source of intellectual and bodily vitality. Mm-hmm. And that touches the lives of many people. Many people say to me, you're a very passionate person. You speak from convictions. Mm-hmm. You speak from a core dimension. And that, when you care about respectability, when you care about what other people think about you, I don't care about prestige also. I think when you care about respectability and you care about prestige, you start censoring yourself and you start commodifying your thoughts and you start making sure that they can fit into the perspective of other people's prejudices and other people's viewpoints, and you lose sight of what is the truth. What are you perceiving in the world? And so I'm someone who is really like an artist who perceives, who loves deeply. I love this great country passionately. I love the American people. I love the world at large very, very deeply. I've been fortunate to travel to over maybe 70 countries giving talks. And I do love the world, but I have a special love for America. And I want the American people to know that they should never be apologists for their great country, because they've earned it. They're the benefactors of the world in many, many respects.
Towards the end of your book, almost at the very end, we have this passage, which I would like to read, because we only have about 30 seconds here left on airtime. Here's a quote. Here's from Dr. Hill's book. I see a collage of all the immigrants and my fellow Americans alike. I say a silent prayer for all of us. The world we desired has been won. It exists. It is real. It is possible. It is ours, my fellow Americans. I squeeze the shoulders of my companions and sense an endless connection of dots emanating between me and them and the world beyond us. I feel a deep sense of love in my heart. This, to me, gives you the authority to write your books and speak what you do. I want to thank you, Dr. Hill, for being our first guest on Freedom Matters, and I wish you the best of luck, and perhaps you'll stop by Santa Barbara and give us a lecture over here. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We're at the end of our broadcast here, and I think we're going to just wrap it up. And thank you so much, audience, for propelling this show and giving us the chance to do this. We'll see you next time on Freedom Matters with Mark McIntire.